when God calls Abram. And whenever you think about what God does and just his framework, you'll see a pattern, and the pattern that you're going to consistently see that takes place in the Bible. And if last week you were listening, I was thinking about the three P's, right? It's principles, promises, patterns. And so the pattern that you'll notice with God is that disruption precedes intention. So you got intention, then disruption. And so when God calls you and you accept, you can count on disruption. Now, why is that? Well, the simplest answer is because the enemy is going to try to remove you from that calling, disrupt what it is that God called you to do, that blessing, that assignment, because he is the kingdom. He is the king of destruction. He wants to rob, kill, and destroy, right? Like, and the king of lies. So that's his intention. So he has to do that, right? And once you, as a Christian, understand the pattern of how the enemy works, and I have a training I did on the enemy because I think it's important that you recognize his pattern. And when you fundamentally understand his pattern, then you are able to navigate through it, expecting it, and be remaining wise and diligent. So therefore, you don't get caught off guard and become, you don't waver from what it is that God called you to do. Well, God called Abram, and he told Abram at 75 or 76 years old that he was going to bless him. And Abram at this time is childless, right? He has no children, no heirs. And he said, I'm going to make your name great. And if you don't know history, in order for your name to be great, that name needs to continue, right? I'm fortunate if I have three boys, all with the last name Flowers. They will continue. And if it's in God's will, they will have some boys, and those boys, and then the Flowers name will continue to live on as a result of that. And you're more than likely in your hierarchy, probably are a result of that too. I want you to spend some time after this podcast going through this because you're going to realize that how God took Abram from the call all the way to the covenant and just the process he took him in, you're going to notice some similarities with the 5 E's. And the 5 E's, which are laws, okay, the first one is you have the law of embracement. And so in order for change to come or transformation to occur, you have to welcome it. Okay, so that's embracement. Then you have the law of engagement. The law of engagement means that you have to be a part of your own rescue. And if you think about it, we can't just rely on God to get things right for us. We have to be a part of that. So we have to engage, right? We can't just be aware now. We have to engage. And once we engage, the next law number 3, is the law of equipping. So when you are being equipped, there are some attributes and assets in any realm that you apply this framework to that you're going to be equipped with. But fundamentally, some of the ones that are referenced in the book will be a vision, mindset, standards, perspective, right? 4 fundamentals that I discuss in The Art of Struggle just in the initial onset that you're going to need as a sub framework into any other equipping skills, understandings that you're going to have, both biblically or non-biblically. You're going to need that. And then when we go into the 4th law, which is the law of empowerment. And so you have to remember, let me go back to number 3. So the law of equipping, you're going to need the right tools for the right job. Law number 4, which is the law of empowerment, you have to be ready to take action, right? So you are the one that needs to take action and be empowered in order for what you've learned to be able to sow the effective seeds to produce results. And then the 5th law is a law of elevation. When you elevate, when you get better, when you are a better representation of yourself, the best representation of yourself, everything and everyone around you also gets better. It's a law. It is sound. It is like the law of thermodynamics or gravity, physics. It will happen. And so I wanted to kind of take that same, and listen, you can take this framework or this system, which system, the acronym for system that we would use in the industry of network marketing is save yourself time, energy, and money, right? Because a system is a strategy that can produce results on demand. And so if you're looking for a transformation in your fitness, a transformation in your finances, or even a transformation with your family, having a framework will allow you to do that. And that's what we're doing right now, is we're providing you with a framework. And we're going to talk about it from a biblical standpoint, and then how you can kind of implement this into your life. And I just really want anyone that's listening right now to really be blessed. Like, we are in really a need, at least I believe so, of just raising up, the Josephs of the world. We really need people to amass and steward hundreds of billions of dollars for us to really compete against the enemy's system of legislation, entertainment, education, some areas in the workforce. And so my responsibility, my purpose is to create the constructs that will enable the Josephs, the Abrams, the Moseses of today's time to rise up, the Sarahs, right? I mean, you can go on, but to raise them up. And I see right now that, God's working through some tremendous women in the marketplace, men. And even though the enemy is trying to get us to compete, man versus woman, which I think is crazy. Like, my wife and I went to go see Barbie yesterday. And you could just see that there's an agenda, right? Like, it was just this man versus female conversation, women being empowered through ruling men. And I just, it's obvious to you, because once you have biblical eyes, you can't unsee these things. You can see the intention. You can see how they're trying to groom little girls and get them to be, I can do anything, I don't need a man. If you notice, there's no messaging in the marketplace telling men that they don't need women. And if we're to be together, Adam and Eve, God made it this way. Why is it that there's always a messaging about a woman not needing a man? Well, if you think about it from an agenda standpoint, if we have same-sex relationships or heterosexual men and women not together, then we start reproducing, and then we begin to destroy God's family and the reproduction of God's family. So it's really the enemies on the mission, and we have to be very conscious of not getting caught up emotionally, or what we've been indoctrinated through our experiences to be reminded of what biblically God wants and what God is ordained, and He's going to win, right? Like, there's no losing. He's already won. We've already won. But while we're on this journey of life, we have to remember not to go by what we see, but to go by what we know, right? And the renewing of our mind is really critical. And that's why conversations and podcasts like the Kingdompreneur podcast helps you live it out, so that you can not conform to this world, which is exactly what the enemy is working very hard to do. And he's very good at it if you think about how he does it. But when you know who he is and what he is, then you understand to not get caught up in that. So when we look at the laws, let's start with the law of embracement. To embrace. If we want a transformation on a biblical level, then our responsibility is to move towards the Lord, right? The Lord's not going to come to us. And that's sometimes one of the biggest discrepancies or misunderstandings, or people take out of context that, if I just call on the Lord and I don't move closer, create an intimate relationship, an independent relationship, a consistency of communication in that relationship, that I can expect for all these fruits, all these increases, all the promises to come to pass. And that's not how it works. Then the second law, in the law of engagement, we have to commit to following God's commandments, His principles, His way of life, right? That the promises that He offers us comes through a commitment for us to do our part. So we have to engage that part of us mentally, physically, and consistently do that. But if we're disengaged, then look, going to church every Sunday is a part of the process, but it's not the entire process. And the indoctrination and belief has become, well, this person goes to church every Sunday, so they must be Christian. They must have God's favor, God's presence around them. And the answer to that is that's actually not true. That's a truism, but it's not fact.